Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, honoring Arbor Day on April 26th, with an ongoing commitment to sustainable stewardship and conservation of Missouri's forests. ChooseWood.com.
If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is St. Louis on the Air.
I'm Sarah Fensky. Yesterday was Casey Nolen's last day at KSDK. The NBC affiliate's political editor and weekend anchor is headed to a new job in Washington, D.C., along with his fiancée and fellow KSDK reporter Abby Llorico. It's a big change. Casey Nolen has been at KSDK for almost 15 years, and in that time, he's become one of St. Louis's most respected TV journalists. And he joins us today. Casey, welcome.
You're going to make me cry right there.
Oh, right at the start.
I mean, that's just, life is too good to bums like me sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you feel really blessed at this moment in your life.
I do. And not to, I don't know exactly where you'd like to go with the conversation. I'm surprised anybody besides myself likes the sound of my own voice. But the top of that list is Abby. You know, I mean, not to get maybe too personal, but like, that's incredible and unbelievable to me still. And I should mention, because she is so much more organized than me, and I was out at the station earlier dragging blazers out when she had her stuff packed yesterday. She is now home with the dogs, packing to go hit the road.
She's packing your house up.
It's a little embarrassing that I'm here seeking attention while she is
She's doing the work.
Doing the work.
So I find myself wondering about your last day. I mean, that's always so hard. Did you actually file a report on your last day? You did.
And that's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, whatever challenges the industry has and different things that you might come across, I think I can speak for Abby and me both. Like when we're doing the work, there's nothing we'd rather be doing. And my last report yesterday, I had this responsibility that someone had sat down and told me their very personal story and the mission that their life is on right now. And so I just
You had to finish that story.
I had to finish, and I had to focus. So it wasn't a lot of like hugs and tears because I was on deadline. And you can ask anyone. I like to say I use every minute possible. They might say I unnecessarily stressed the entire team. But nevertheless, we made slot.
Yeah, so you cut it close. You hit that deadline.
I like to say I used all the time I had. Why would you waste any of it?
There you go. I mean, I think how you've gained so much respect over the years is that you're there every day working. You know, you're doing that story. And I think just a great example of this, it turns out there was Casey Nolen Day. This happened last Thursday. Mayor Tashara Jones proclaimed this to be Casey Nolen Day. I guess that came out of left field.
I'm still not so sure I wasn't being punked.
No, this was for real. I've seen it on Twitter. Once you see it on Twitter, you know it's for real. Yeah. So how did they spring this on you?
Well, I had one last interview with her scheduled. I knew there were some things we needed to talk about with ARPA and you know, just where the city's headed and different things like that I wanted to just, you know, try to make some time for. And when we were wrapping up, as we often do on a taped interview, what else would you like to say that I haven't asked you? Things like that. And she said, we have a little surprise for you. And then Nick Dunn, her communications person, came out and handed me that. And it was, as I think I said at the time, ridiculous. But it was very, I mean, I'm both embarrassed and it's ridiculous, but I'll treasure it, and you better believe it's going on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. But what I love most about this story is after you got the proclamation, like you didn't go do a champagne toast somewhere. You went back to the TV station and then you cut and edited the piece about this that had to air on the news.
Yeah, that's right. So I didn't, the photographer I was lucky to be working with that day, Joe Young, recorded it, and then the producer said, "Hey, we got to put that on the TV." I was like, "I don't know about that." She goes, "No, it's already written. Can you cut the video?" I was like, "Okay, no problem." That's the glamour of TV right there.
That's the glamour. Like, you're doing the work. And so this gets to sort of your background in St. Louis TV journalism. You were the first MMJ. This is multimedia journalist.
Backpack journalist, as it said on my first contract as I cleaned out my desk today. I saw, yeah.
And I feel like these backpack journalists were kind of controversial when they started coming into the bigger markets, because the idea was, you're out in the field, you get a whole crew to come with you, and the crew has to do a lot of the work. Backpack journalists, you're there, you're filming yourself.
Yeah. It's got its ups and downs, but I think, ask any industry, and their jobs are changing. There's one of our favorite sandwich shops. You order your sandwich at a kiosk, not from a person. So things are changing, right? But as far as how it affects the quality of reporting, I mean, I shoot 80-90% of my own stories, and I have a tiny little camera that might not get me past security at City Hall, but it's also less intimidating when you approach someone. And I feel like the conversations, not always, 50-50. I would just there are certain situations where I couldn't do it without a second man or woman behind the camera with me. But there are advantages to that tiny gear and the kind of intimate conversations you can have maybe on the more personal stories sometimes.
Yeah.
And I just like shooting video.
Well, yeah, and having to shoot your own stuff, I feel like there's a real misconception with some print journalists that what print journalists do is harder, and TV people are just good looking. I don't know, it's harder.
I don't know about the second part, because but yeah, you're right. No, so that's a really good point. I agree. I think there's like X amount of energy all of us put into any given story. But so where we may, there is value in the visual reporting, in that a person can judge for themselves whether the politician or the police officer or the person claiming innocence, whoever, you can judge for yourself whether you believe them when you see what they are saying.
It's powerful.
And see how they say it.
A good TV interview.
Yes. So I think there is really, really, meaty value in the visual journalism. Having said that, there is a lot of just logistical. There are a lot of logistical challenges into shooting, writing, editing that takes up time. So whereas the print person maybe could have done a little more research, or could have written a longer story for the digital version or whatever. So there's only so much energy all of us can put into it, and that's why you gotta watch more than you gotta watch your news, and you gotta read your news. You gotta kind of get a sampling of different mediums.
I like that way of looking at it. Did it ever frustrate you though that people are thinking, TV, they're just doing the quick hit thing, all they do is this? People don't always take TV reporters as seriously as they should.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We don't always live up to the standard that we should either, right? Yeah. So, listen, we're all under attack right now. I don't have any qualms about saying that. I mean, and from both sides. I just saw something yesterday on Twitter where a fairly prominent Democrat in the state was taking issue with a fairly prominent newspaper. I'm like, yeah, they make mistakes and they should correct them. They should own up to them. But, are we going to we can't just dismiss these institutions that we rely on to – it's mob rule if we don't have the press. It's just mob rule. And so we have to take seriously and support, whether it be in subscriptions or donations like you all are talking about now, partnerships, or even just in the spirit of how you talk about your local newspaper or your local. Having said that, hold us accountable too.
Sure.
Because we can't have unchecked media either.
But do you think that's something that has changed in the 15 years you've been working in St. Louis journalism, that maybe state leaders or other politicians around the state maybe have a testier relationship with, they're almost proud of it being a testy relationship?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, I mean, look, we don't have to get into it now, but I think we can, those who follow the news closely in the state can think of a good example that's been highlighted.
A good recent example
that continues to highlight itself over and over again. But it's back and forth. So yes, there is some of that showmanship that goes on, I think. But also, I will tell you that there are politicians who still seem to value local news almost more than national news, or, they have platforms of their own, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, but they still want to talk to us. And I'll give you two examples on two extremes of the political spectrum. Josh Hawley and Cori Bush are both willing to talk to me pretty regularly.
And themselves, not just their handlers.
No, yeah. And especially now in this Zoom world, I think they've learned to take advantage of that. Well, sometimes they have resources once they're in Washington where they can sit in front of a satellite link up and whatnot. But they are both, I would say, two of the better examples of accessibility as politicians.
It's interesting because they seem so different, and they're obviously on a very what's the word I'm looking for? Mm-hmm. They're both very far on the political spectrum, but in different directions. Do you see some commonalities with these two young, kind of maybe rising stars?
Well, I'd like to bring in Jason Rosenbaum to have a fuller picture of what I'm about to say here. But are they not both, fighting over the working class vote? Mm-hmm. They both will claim to be the answer to the every person problems. We have this. Who could have guessed that Republicans would be the populist? 15 years ago, and at the same time, Cori Bush would tell you, well, how can you be for the working man when you don't want him or her to have health care? I'm not endorsing these theories, but. So on one hand, they're both fighting for the same votes, it seems, perhaps, or and maybe the identity of their parties at the same time. But I think more importantly, to stay on topic here, they both seem to value that those of us in local media are trusted, I hope, to some degree because we do live here. Mm-hmm. They can see Sarah Finsky at the grocery store and give you a piece of their mind.
Yeah.
They don't maybe feel that way with the New York Times or whatever. So I think they recognize something that maybe we all ought to recognize in ourselves a little more, that we, yes, the business is changing. It's up to some bean counters that I don't even know the names of to figure out how we all stay on the air. But we do have value.
Yeah. I mean, they certainly have their finger on the pulse, and they see that value. Have you seen a lot of change in that TV news business model here in this one market, being there for 15 years? So many people are just streaming Netflix as opposed to watching NBC.
Yeah.
Does that make it harder to do the job the way that you did it?
Sure. And again, for ethical reasons and other, just traditions, that I don't really know much of the business side. They've done a good job of keeping a wall between the editorial newsroom and the folks in the sales department over on the commercial side there. So I don't want to, talk out of my league, out of my expertise here. But sure, things have changed for sure. I mean, I can tell you when. It's like anything, and if we're just talking about television, it's anything else in TV, live and instantaneous, people still come to. Mm-hmm. If it's, God forbid, something of a conflict in nature that we are covering wall to wall, as we say, yeah, you can see the spike in the viewership. Or if there is a storm, you can make fun of it all you want.
Very good for business.
Everybody making fun of it is also watching, let me just tell you.
Yeah.
So, or at the beginning of the pandemic, when we needed to know information and we needed to know, from our local sources. I mean, I think March 2020, people were watching like the good old days because... Yeah, I mean, if you can also DVR and there's so many other so we are a niche, just like Spotify, bands on Spotify or anything else. But that's our job to figure out how to be in a lot of those places.
We're talking today to Casey Nolen. He is the longtime journalist, political editor at KSDK. Up until yesterday, he's headed to a new job in Washington, D.C., working for the same company that owns KSDK. He'll be working for their Washington affiliate. Casey, something that is unusual about you, at least as far as the journalists I know, is you're actually from rural Missouri. You grew up outside Cape Girardeau. Is that right?
Sarah, I've been working years to hide my... insecurities about my lack of education, trying to seem sophisticated, and now you're going to out me here.
You have an education, but
yeah, well, don't call Mizzou and ask them for my transcripts. I'll tell you that.
You were not a straight A student.
No, I was in the classes that had to do with video production, but I was. Let's not go down that road there. Yeah, and that's talk about a change. I grew up in Southeast Missouri. Was it Bill Emerson, who was the Republican congressman down there, and he was a rarity. They called people who voted for him Immigrants because it was very blue. My grandmother in her generation were all, New Deal Democrats. And so talk about how things have changed there as well, politically anyway. Also, I can certainly see how at least that slice of rural America has changed, with the amenities, the grocery stores that used to be there that are no longer there because Walmart is a 20-minute drive away and things like that. So I have a real fondness for rural Missouri, as just like I do St. Louis.
So what made you, growing up in rural Missouri, get so interested? It sounds like it was the video side of things you got interested in.
Yeah.
What was the draw there?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Listen, I stumbled into this career, Sarah. I went to Mizzou because I wanted to, go explore what I thought was a big city in Columbia, Missouri. I never forget learning about one-way streets the hard way.
You had not had one-way streets prior to Columbia.
No, not in somewhere I'd lived.
Tell me you didn't crash head on.
No. And then there's a great journalism school there that I did not attend, but I started to associate with. And next thing you know, I was running a camera, and they found me a job, and that's how we got here.
So they kind of sucked you in. You weren't one of these kids who was like, I'm going to Mizzou. I want to be a journalist. I'm going to TV.
No, not at all. No.
And how did they do that? Did you have friends in that program, or
they put a sign? I wanted to work in documentary production, so I was in the comm department, and they had a sign hanging on the wall looking for camera operators, and I needed a job, and I said, okay. So I went out there, and the next thing you knew, I was shooting news and sucked in and got bit by the news biz.
Got bit by the news biz. I love it. Well, I'm actually going to go to the phone lines here.
Okay.
We have another thing that you got bit by.
Yeah.
That is Abby Llorico, a reporter at KSDK, Casey Nolen's fiance. Abby, hi.
Hey, great chat. I feel like I just want to keep listening to Casey tell more stories.
Abby, I'll be home soon. I'm really sorry. I just don't lift any heavy boxes. I will be home soon.
Abby, this doesn't seem fair that you got stuck with all the packing. Is this kind of how things go? Casey likes to cut things a little close, and you're there to organize?
Well, we're running up on a break here, I see.
I'm the brains behind the operation at home. I'm a little bit more. In the TV world, he's really good at video. I'm really good at production. And that's how it works at home, too. He's really good at the going out in the world stuff, and I'm good at the keeping the house running. So, yes, I'm standing between a bunch of U-Haul boxes, but I'm glad that he has a chance to connect with you all here in St. Louis one more time.
Well, we appreciate you freeing him up for that. So I got to ask, I used to think of Casey as like one of the St. Louis bachelors, man about town. How did the two of you forge this
This is not really on the air, is it?
Oh, it's not really on the air. You can throw down.
Well, Sarah, I'll just tell you this. I did too. And
what's going on?
Didn't think I would wind up falling for the guy who was showing me how to use my camera, and I was trying to get his attention with cleverly worded tweets. I had no idea that he was also interested in me.
You were tweeting at him, Abby?
Yeah, well, I was tweeting at him. I was posting things on Instagram to try to see, because remember, I worked the morning show for the first several years until March of 2020, actually. I was on the morning show and he was night side, and so we barely saw each other at work, but I just thought he was so smart, and his reputation about being kind of a cool bachelor guy may have made its way to the morning show as well, but I'm really glad I got to know him a little better.
Just for the record, Abby is the most brilliant human I've ever come across, and she makes me want to be a better man. So.
I love that. And I love that, she had to resort to flirting with you on Twitter, but eventually you realized
she's being very kind. Wow, the first time I ever called her for a story on the clock, she answered and said, I have a work phone, right? You don't have to call my personal phone. So I'm not sure that she's giving you the full picture here.
Well, I'm so glad the two of you have ended up together. And I feel like St. Louis loves this love story. We're also very sad to leave you. Has the last day or two, has it sunk in? You guys are headed to Washington.
Abby, you take that one.
I think it's one of those things where, it's going to take a while to sink in, because we still kind of look at each other, And sometimes we say, are we grown-ups who are allowed to be in charge of our own life like this? And so this is just kind of the biggest step that either one of us have ever taken with another person. That's not even talking about getting married this summer. Just the idea of moving to a new place and finding things out for the first time and learning a new city. I'm so confident in Casey that it's going to be moments before people there love him the way that they have here for nearly 15 years. I'm excited for the new challenge. And my family knows that we're not, and his family as well, who's on their way to come help us with some of the packing, knows that we're not too far away. And St. Louis will always be home.
Well, I hope you guys will not be strangers. Abby Llorico, thank you for calling in and joining this conversation.
You home soon.
All right. Don't let him stay too late. He has boxes to move.
Well, on that note, Casey, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Today's episode was produced by Sarah Fensky, with audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr. Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, honoring Arbor Day on April 26th, with an ongoing commitment to sustainable stewardship and conservation of Missouri's forests. ChooseWood.com.